What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and we have our data download right here for the next upcoming batch. Now, I know a lot of people probably had the predictions that, okay, maybe the next Sugo Fest to come out is going to be part 2, but it's going to be very similar to what they did during the 11th anniversary, where we had the big banner with Luffy and Kizaru in the middle of the month, then they had a generic Kizuna filler event, and then the end of the month was the next part of the Sugo Fest. And it's probably going to be the same thing here. As we can see, there is a data download here for a brand new Kizuna Clash Sugo Fest, featuring a brand new Sugo Fest exclusive, a dual unit of Dorry and Broggy, which is cool. So we're going to go ahead and break down what their abilities are, and it makes a lot of sense for them to debut now, and they're going to have really good synergies with the new Luffy, of course, being quick and powerhouse focused. Lo and behold, these characters are also going to be quick and powerhouse focused. Now, they're not alone. They're going to be debuting alongside two additional characters. We have Kashii and Oimo. For some reason, it looks like they're split amongst the banners, so maybe one is a support Red Recruit, one is a Kizuna Clash Red Recruit. That would be my assumption, but I actually haven't broken down what their abilities are yet. Last night, before I went to bed, I actually had the data download on Japan, so I have had a brief look at what Dorry and Broggy already do, but I actually haven't had a full look at the English translations, and I don't know what the Rare Recruits do. And there's also the super evolution of this month's Pirate Rumble character, which is going to be Usopp and Nami, so we'll go ahead and break down those characters as well. So let's just jump into things. Of course, let's jump into Dorry and Broggy first, because that's going to be the most exciting character to have a look at. So Dorry and Broggy are powerhouse and slasher, and when you have a look at both sides of this dual unit, both of which are quick, so it's always going to be quick, powerhouse, and slasher. Another thing to look at immediately is their potential abilities. They've got Enrage, they've got Critical Strike, which makes sense because a lot of slasher-focused characters do have Critical Strike. And then they also have the new potential ability of Damage Limit Break, which is the damage cap-focused ability. So this is based on the number of quick characters on your crew. Okay, honestly, I'm not really the biggest fan of this damage cap potential ability because it's useless most of the time. Unless if they give us tablets for this ability, I just really don't think it's that useful, honestly. It's whatever. Anyways, you can see that they're level 110, which means that if you do pull them, they will automatically come in with, it looks like, 3 duplicates already in them. So that's pretty cool. So if you do pull 2 copies of Dorry and Broggy, you can actually get their level limit break quite high. And in terms of the rumble aspects of this character, getting their levels quite high is going to be more important because their rumble special doesn't do damage through defense. It's totally focused on just normal damage, which when you pull a new legend, characters that are just focused on doing normal damage, they're a little underwhelming because they don't really get that major power bump from damage through defense, which means that they're always going to be doing good damage. So getting more investments into their stats is always going to be good. Let's break down their abilities though. So let's go ahead and have a look at the captain ability. So I guess, because they're dual units, they do have slightly different captains here. So this is Dorry's captain ability. His captain ability will give 2 turns of cooldown to Powerhouse. Powerhouse get 5 times attack, 1.5 times HP. Int Recovery Tandem is going to be matching. It does 150 times their attack and quick damage to all enemies at the end of the turn. I mean, just reading this immediately, I'm already getting vibes of V1 Kaido. You got the cooldown reduction, attack boost, and you got HP boost as well. End of turn damage, very similar to V1 Kaido, and V1 Kaido is also a powerhouse captain, so it's interesting. And then applies the following effect based on tags. So if you have 3 or more Giant, Straw Hats, or 4 Emperors on your crew, he will give a further 1.1 times boost to Powerhouse, and if 3 or more Giant characters are on the crew, and the crew applies a multiplicative chain multiplier boost, or another status effect is applied to the crew, all enemies, or an individual enemy on the same turn after the required effect was applied. Okay, that's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but so I'm going to read that again because that literally doesn't make any sense. So it says you get either a multiplicative chain buff, or another status effect is applied to the crew, all enemies, or an individual enemy on the same turn after the required effect was applied. I'm not 100% sure what that means. I mean, it could be like if you extend a certain buff. So let's say you have 3 turns of an attack boost and then you extend it by 2 turns. Or if the enemy has increased damage taken and like you extend it or you enhance it, potentially could be what it means. The mumbo jumbo here is very confusing. Even when I did I had a look at the translations from the Japanese images that I saw for his captain ability, and it still didn't really make a ton of sense to me. What I understood is that like if you extend a buff that's already present, that's when it triggers either way. So you still need 3 giant characters on the crew, and you need to have multiplicative chain buff or this other ability. It will launch their special at the start of the next turn, and that can occur twice per adventure. So that's interesting. So being able to auto launch the special is a really powerful effect, but of course this is only within their captain. You don't get this ability when they're a crewmate, but overall, pretty interesting. Let's see if there's any differences between Broggy's captain ability. The types of slots that are matching are different. The attack multiplier is a little lower, but it's not based on having matching slots. And it looks like it's pretty much the same for the rest of it. Okay. And then in their dual captain, 5.25 times attack, 300 times attack in end of turn damage, so it's obviously a lot stronger. And all of this looks to be the same. It's just a slightly higher number in terms of damage and slightly higher in terms of the end of turn damage, and of course more matching slots. So captain ability wise, it's like okay. I don't think you're really going to be using them for their captain ability. Let's move on to their special. So the special will cut the crew's HP by 80%, which actually is interesting because this helps the Frankie legend that came out at the start of the month. His superclass condition requires you to be at 25% HP or less in order to trigger his abilities, and if you're using the Luffy and the Frankie together, this character can get you to those low HP thresholds. Beforehand, we were applying like Memories of Straw Hat Jinbei, which could actually work quite well, so I wonder if this is going to be a direct replacement. So you get an 80% health cut. It reduces Powerhouse and Slasher cooldown by 3 turns, which is really, really good. He also reduces enemy barriers by 3 turns, also exceptional. And then he also reduces damage taken by 90% for 1 turn. I mean, if that was just the special, that's already really, really good. He then says, if you have 4 or more Giants, Straw Hats, or 4 Emperors on the crew, boost Powerhouse characters attack based on damage reduction, which is amazing. So you get like a further buff that is really hard to apply on the crew, and they're self-sufficient in doing that. So if you have 4 or more Giants, Straw Hats, or 4 Emperors, you get a damage reduction based attack boost, and it's based on, like, if you have a look at their 90% damage reduction, it gives you a 1.9 times damage boost, and then it says it halves the effect otherwise. So even if you don't have the 4 tags on the crew, you are still receiving damage reduction based attack boost at a lower multiplier, which is still amazing that they do that, so I like that. It also says that when special launch status is at 1, okay? So if you have a special launch status at 1, so basically if you've launched his special once, when you launch it again, I'm pretty sure it will trigger it, but I think also their superclass can fulfill this condition. So if you have special launch status at 1, you get a 90% HP guard for 1 turn, which is also very good, making sense because, you know, if you're going to be at low HP thresholds and you still want to perform your Rush Sugo special, having an HP guard is very, very vital because it lowers the health cut that you receive via activating Rush Sugo special, so this actually makes a ton of sense. It also says it changes this character slot and adjacent slots, including block into matching, and then boost the chain by 1.5 times. It's a multiplicative buff for 1 turn. And then after that, if you have a Powerhouse or a Slasher captain, then you become Dorry Broggy for 1 turn, and applies increased damage taken status to all enemies by 1.75 times, ignoring immunity to status effects. This is a very good special. I think Dorry Broggy, for a Kizuna legend, I really do like this, and especially because of the synergy between this guy and the new Luffy, and Ace and Whitebeard, and Frankie. Like, this is a pretty strong special. Even if you're just looking outside of that, like without the context of the recently released characters, the special by itself is pretty good. I mean, you're getting the health cut, which can help you get around stun mechanics that might be in this Kizuna Clash, we'll see. 3 turns of special cooldown, 3 turns of barriers, 90% damage reduction based attack boost, and then if you use, well, it looks like you have to use their super class in order to get the secondary effect, which could be a little annoying. but being able to inflict 1.75 times increased damage taken through immunity is very strong. The superclass ability, it says you need any 2 of the following, which is, looks like it's any of the Straw Hats, as well as Vivi, Karoo, Oimo, Kashii, and Shanks. Okay, seems pretty decent. And the effect itself will set special launch status to 1, reduces all enemies' damage nullification by 2 turns, bottom row slots to recovery, 2.25 times attack boost to powerhouse, and changes powerhouse into super powerhouse. Now, can use it as a crewmate. Except as support characters. It doesn't look like you can. That really sucks, actually. Not being able to use this as a crewmate is a big L. Unless if there's going to be some additional character that comes out that has like captain shift, maybe. Yeah, the fact that it says when the character becomes Dorry Broggy, any 2 of the following characters are on the crew. Yeah, it doesn't say you can use it as a crewmate, which is a big loss, because that super class effect is quite strong. And you can't set their special launch status to 1, so you actually lose out on a couple of abilities when you use them as a sub, thinking with like Luffy in mind. So yeah, that's already that kind of sucks. I'm not really a big fan of that. Crewmate ability does resist special reverse. He can't be blown away, which is quite good. Let's have a look at this switch ability here. So the switch ability will go ahead and change their own slot into matching. A 1.2 times chain multiplier buff can be overwritten. Interesting. And then you have their super switch, which gives you a 90% HP guard for 1 turn. So even if, I guess, you know, the HP guard in their special only triggers if you're the captain, being able to set their special launch status to 1. But if you have them as a sub and use their super switch, you can still get the HP guard, which is kind of important. And then also the 1.5 times chain multiplier adjacent and own slots into matching. The only real issue is it's a 9-turn super switch. That is ridiculous. Now, I think the reason why it's such a high super switch is maybe either 1, they value HP guard so highly, or number 2, you're supposed to use the new Luffy with this guy regardless of what's happening, because the new Luffy can give 2 turns of cooldown to versus effect, super switch, and normal cooldown, and I believe Luffy's EX super can also give, I think it's like -4 turns to super switches, so I think that's what they really want you to use him with the new Luffy. Like, I get it makes sense, but still, 9 switches like in a vacuum by itself, it's pretty rough. 9 is a ridiculously high number. Okay, so in terms of like normal kit, I think that Dorry and Broggy are actually relatively solid. Let's have a look at the Rumble abilities here. So for Rumble, they're focused on Slasher and Powerhouse, giving 6 attack, HP, and speed, and then if the time remaining is more than 40 seconds, they give themselves level 6 defense, and special CT at level 5 also to themselves. That's actually kind of good. Like, it's pretty generic, works pretty well in a lot of different teams, and the fact that they give themselves special CT makes sense, because, I mean, they got a relatively high cooldown special here, 35, and the special itself will go ahead and target your Slasher and Powerhouse teammates for 5 attack for 20 seconds, a nice little buff, and then, if you have 4 or more Straw Hats, Giant, or Redhead pirate characters on the team, he targets your team for 100% chance to remove attack down, and also targets all enemies for 5 times damage. And then if there's 40 seconds or less, you get 3 times damage on top of that 5 times damage. So yeah, he hits pretty hard. Of course, you do need to be at that low time account for that to eventuate. But another thing is, like we kind of talked about it at the start of the video, the fact that they don't do damage through defense means that getting as many stats on them as possible is very, very important for them to actually be an offensive threat, meaning that, you know, investments into their level limit break is going to be very important for them to actually be kind of important, for them to actually be vital in, you know, putting out a lot of damage against the opponent. So in terms of team builds, I mean, he's obviously Slasher focused, so you could run him on a Slasher team, potentially. And he could work with Shanks, because, you know, Shanks is 4 Emperors, he's a Redhead Pirate, so that can kind of work. But you also have potentially like the quick powerhouse team that's kind of eventuating right now. But I think another character that you could potentially think about using on a team with is like the Versus Blackbeard, because Versus Blackbeard has an ability that can nerf enemy stats, including their defense. So being able to potentially use Blackbeard alongside a character such as this to do as much damage as possible, it's an option, right? It's an option. They also evade special bind, and they take less damage from fighter and cerebral enemies, so that's kind of interesting too. So there's Dorry and Broggy. I think that they're a pretty solid character overall, and the question is, people are going to ask, should I pull for this character? I think you should not do that. Obviously, part 2 of the major Super Sugo Fest is going to be occurring likely 27th, 28th, 29th of September. I would wait for then, but you know, if you have expiring Rainbow Tavern medals, you know, you could potentially throw them here and see what happens, right? There is going to be a discount multi, not only on part 1, but also on part 2 of the banner, so you can potentially try your luck there. It is what it is. This banner will be here for a little while, but actually, now that I'm noticing, I did time skip to, I think it was like I time skipped a week from now, so it's like the 25th, I think I time skipped to, and you can see there's only 3 days left, so this Kizuna banner literally doesn't stay around for long. So that is actually kind of interesting. I guess we can briefly have a look at the 2 additional rare recruits that are coming along here. So here we have the first one, which is Kashii, one of the giants, who is a quick powerhouse slasher, and his special ability here reduces paralysis by 6, reduces defense up by 6, which is pretty good. If you have 30% HP or less when you launch the special, he also reduces enemies' threshold by 3. If you have an attack boost, color affinity boost, multiplicative chain boost, and an attack boost based on damage reduction when you launch the special, further increases your crew's attack boost and multiplicative chain buff by 0.4. Okay, you're basically never seeing that. And then also extends the duration of your color affinity boost by 1 turn, and then after that boosts the color affinity boosts of Powerhouse by 2.25 for 2 turns, allows this effect to be further buffed twice, and then if 3 or more giants are on the crew, boost the chain by 1.2 for 3 turns and further buff your color affinity boost, including from the special. Okay, so he does a lot of different things, but because the whole middle part of his special is solely focused around if you have XYZ 1, 2, 3 buffs, then you get something. Yeah, you're never going to see that, but you're going to get the paralysis, the defense removal. If you're below 30%, you get some threshold removal, which is kind of nice, and then you can get a color affinity boost from him as well. If you do have the 3 or more giants on the team, you can get a chain addition. So I think that he's just like fine. I'm not really that sold on a character such as this. He can't be blown away, and he also gives an HP buff. He does have the fear reduction, which is kind of interesting. Like, I don't get why he has fear reduction. Like, what, so that, you know, he can't not be blown away? It's just a really weird effect. Support effect attaches to any giant character. Once per quest, if you use that character special, boosts color affinity of Powerhouse by 1.75. That's a very good support, attaching only to giants, so it is a relatively small pool of characters you can use it with, but I think it's a pretty good support nonetheless. So that is Kashii. If we go over to the second part of the Sugo Fest, we have Oimo as the next character here. As suspected, you can see that the character's cost on the right hand side, cost 1, meaning this character is a support rare recruit, so you can't expect too much in terms of the normal kit. If your HP is less than 30% when you launch the special, reduces bind duration by 6 turns, and attack down by 3 turns. Otherwise, you still get 3 turns of bind removal, okay. If you have 3 or more giants, you get the 2.25 orb boost to Striker and Powerhouse. Otherwise, it's 1.75. Again, like nothing too crazy here. And then the support effect, attaching to Usopp, Chopper, Shanks, Dorry, and Broggy. Once per quest, if you're inflicted with bind, you cut your crew's HP by 20% and reduces bind duration by 2 turns, and allows the crew to perform a super tandem with int and recovery slots for 1 turn, and reduces switch effect by 2 at the start of the next turn. Okay, that's a pretty good support effect. Being able to abuse super tandem with recovery and int slots via a support, I think that this has a lot of cool implications, but the fact that it still removes 2 turns of bind at the end of the day, you can also remove some HP, which we'll see what happens, but like there's probably a good situation where the enemy is going to like stun your team and inflict bind at the same time, and this support just triggers all of that to remove it all. We'll see what happens, but I think on paper it's actually a very, very good support effect, so we'll see, I guess. So there we go. Those are the new characters that are debuting in the Sugo Fest, which is going to be starting on September 19th. So at news time tonight, we should get the full information about the Kizuna Clash and the Sugo Fest in-game. Now, before we wrap up the video, we do still have one other thing to talk about, which is the super evolution of Nami and Usopp. Now, this character, ever since they came out, has been a character that no one really cares about. I mean, some people think that, oh, you know, that they've got, you know, some kind of, underrated mechanics, but, like, let's be real, this is a character that essentially never sees play. Interesting thing to see here is that, you know, Nami and Usopp are in their Wano outfits, but when they super evolve, they actually become egghead tags, so they lose Wano, to gain Egghead. Very, very interesting. So that could have some weird implications for characters in the future. But here we have Nami and Usopp here, Cerebral Shooter. Let's have a look at the Captain ability. So the Captain ability is probably not going to be anything too exciting, but Cerebral Shooter and Free Spirit get a 4.5 times attack boost, 1.3 times HP, boost damage dealt to delayed enemies by 1.2, delays all enemies for 1 turn at a fixed chance based on the total damage dealt for 1 turn. Shout out to my boy Mr. Slam Jam Katakuri V1. Very similar Captain ability to this. So based on the normal attacks that you do, depending on how much damage you can do with your normal attacks, you have a chance to delay the enemy. So if you do 1 million damage with your normal attacks, you get a guaranteed delay. If it's 3 million damage, it's guaranteed delay through immunity. And it says over 5 million damage adds 1 turn to all enemies for each battle after preemptive actions. That seems really busted. So this looks very similar to what Legend Hawkins does, where whenever you enter a new stage, he just clicks everyone's counter up by 1, and it's not considered a delay. It's considered it's its own thing. It's just you tick up all of their counters by 1. So it looks like they do that in their Captain ability. We'll see if that's going to have any uses in the future. It then says if you have 4 or more Straw Hats on the crew, reduces Despair by 3 turns, and then boost Straw Hat Pirate's base attack by 500. It's a pretty interesting dual Captain ability. Do they have anything interesting in their solo captains? It looks very similar in their solo captains. They do still have 100% chance to delay by unaffected delay block with over 5 million. Okay. Yeah, it's basically the numbers are slightly different here depending on their solo captains. Okay, it's interesting. They've got some utility in their Captain now, but it is only for Straw Hats, or you need to have 4 Straw Hats in order to trigger that minor Despair removal. So Captain ability wise, you're not going to use this character as a Captain, let's be real here. Special ability here is going to paralyze all enemies for 5 turns, and then delays them for 2 turns, reduces paralysis and special bind by 6. So they already did this kind of previously. Boost color affinity of normal attacks for Cerebral and Shooter characters based on the number of Straw Hats on the crew. So you at least get a 2.5, but if you have up to 6 Straw Hats on the crew, then this can be a 3.5 times color affinity boost for Cerebral and Shooter. I mean, that's fine, but the fact that they're Cerebral and Shooter focused, but also need you to use Straw Hats, like, it's actually kind of restricting in terms of the team building aspects. He then also further increases damage against delayed enemies by 0.5. if the crew has damage against delayed enemy boost when you launch the special, and if 4 or more Straw Hats are on the team, and the enemy has immunity to delay, or all status effects, it will delay them for 1 turn, ignoring that. And then also will become Nami and Usopp for 3 turns. I mean, like, to be honest, this is kind of a pretty lame special. It's not really a lot going on. So you've got, like, you're paralyzing them, you can delay them. The paralysis and special bind, we like that. That's obviously good. You get the color affinity boost, but it's only for Cerebral and Shooter, and it's also kind of locked behind how many Straw Hats you have, depending on how high that number goes. And then you can get a buff to the conditional boost that you already have, which their switch will likely already apply. And then if you have 4 more Straw Hats, the delay just goes through immunity. Like, there's not really a lot going on here. For a super evolution, like, come on, this is pretty mundane. Let's have a look at this switch ability here. So their base switch, matching slot, removes their own special bind, removes the crew's bind and despair duration by 1, and 1.5 times delayed conditional boost. So 1.5 is very, very minor. The super switch is only 4, so that's a positive. The super switch here will give their own and adjacent slots matching through block, so that's a nice change. Get rid of their own special bind. Remove bind and despair duration by 3 turns with their super switch, that's nice. And then the delayed conditional boost is 2.25. So when you activate their special with their super switch, it actually becomes a 2.75 times conditional boost, guaranteed delay, color affinity boost, paralysis special bind removal. I mean, there's some cool stuff going on, but having to have so many Straw Hats on the team, whilst also only boosting Cerebral and Shooter, I think that's where things can kind of break down, hypothetically, if you opt to use them as a captain. Obviously, if you don't use them as a captain, it is what it is. You still get some utility, conditional boost. There's some cool things, I suppose, but like, it's a pretty disappointing 6+. Let's be real. I wanted there to be more utility going on. Like, give us a reason to use this character, because at the moment, I just don't think that there's much of a reason to use a character such as this. Let's have a look at the Rumble. Maybe the Rumble received a pretty nice update. So for Cerebral characters, they give 7 HP, 8 crit. Crit is not very good in Rumble these days, so that's disappointing. And then they also give a buff to Strength and Psi characters. Defense level 5, and if 5 or more Cerebral are on the team, all enemies defense down level 5. that's pretty good. Level 7 defense down from a Rumble ability passive is quite strong. You need 5 cerebral units to do it. We'll see if this character even makes it onto the team. Let's see what this special does. So the special does a large range 3.5 damage, 100% chance of paralysis, special CT 20% delay, and then cerebral teammates get level 9 crit. I mean, as I said, crit doesn't really matter. The fact that this character does CT delay is good, but when you have a look at the special CT, 32, and we've got other characters that can do special CT delay at a much more reasonable CT timer, and the fact that it's a Nami character, and if you want to build a cerebral team, like, you're probably already using a cerebral character Nami on this team anyway. So I just think that this character is too hard to put on teams. The character isn't good enough to outpace other Namis on a cerebral team. So I think overall it's a pretty disappointing super evolution. At least the sprite looks really cool. I mean, you can see Nami swinging that. You can see the lightning everywhere. Like, I think this is a really cool sprite. It looks cool aesthetically. The character is not that good. So look, it is what it is. Look, either way, this event period here for this Kizuna Clash is going to be the filler for us to kind of hold us over until part 2 of the event, which, as I said, should be 27th, 28th, 29th of September, where we're going to have a big reveal of another Super Sugo Fest that we're all looking forward to. But that's going to wrap it up for me for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed this video today. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.